morning, good morning, good morning. What is up, martial artists and martial arts fans alike? How are y'all doing today? We're coming at you with an 8th episode of Martial Mornings. If you guys saw the embedded, you guys caught the good morning reference. So this episode is going to be a little different because sadly Vic won't be able to make it, but it's all right. Hopefully we'll be able to catch him for the next time. But for this card, we have Conor versus Dustin, the trilogy. I honestly, personally cannot wait for this card. This one's going to be one of the more stacked ones of the year. From the early prelims to the main event, all throughout, there's going to be people you're going to recognize, people that have fought for the title, like Jennifer Maya. And then we have people like Ryan Hall. We have Nico Price, who's a crazy finisher. Michael Pereira, which is a showman. No, it's going to be an insane night. But we're going to get right into it. Why not? So to start off the main card, we got OMalley versus Chris Montano. So my problem with this fight is that Chris Montano just got signed to the UFC. And I asked myself, why does the UFC keep doing this? They keep signing people and just feeding them. And like there was a situation with Yana Kunitskaya, who's actually going to fight on this card, coincidentally. They signed her and they put her up against Cyborg when Cyborg was still the champ. I don't get it, man. But anyways, that's besides the point. I'm ranting at this point. OMalley, we all know him, like him or don't. You know who he is. And you got to give him credit when credit is due, man. He's good on the feet. He's technical. Well, he's kind of crazy. He's a wild card. I'm not going to lie. He does all kinds of flashy stuff, but it works for him. And then Chris Montano, I actually looked at his last fight, and I wasn't too impressed, I have to say. He didn't show much. He did get a finish, but I know that OMalley is most likely going to show out in this one, and he's going to dominate as in usual fashion, most likely. So I honestly think for bettors, this is a good one, just throwing that out there. And so Chris Montano, what I noticed, the negative of his last fight is he kept his head on the center line, which OMalley will definitely be able to capitalize on that because OMalley has just good distance control and good feints. He gets creative with it, and once he gets in a flow, it's going to be hard to stop him. And then Chris Montano, the thing about him is he got submitted twice and knocked out twice. That's already his 4 losses, 2-2. Not good. And then another thing about him is most of his wins have come from decision. So you know for a fact that he's not going to knock OMalley out or find a way to finish him. And another thing he said was that he doesn't care if he wins or he loses. He just wants to get fight of the night. So that's already a mentality of, he doesn't care what happens. He just wants to put on a show, which is, I guess, a good mentality, but it could get you caught. It could get you finished. But whatever. At least we know we're going to see an exciting fight. So moving on to the next one. We have Irene Aldana, 12-6, versus, I love her last name, Yana Kunitskaya, 14-5. So they're pretty identical almost. Irene Aldana is only going to be 2 inches taller. But other than that, just about the same age, same inches and reach. So the difference in them is that we'll start off with Irene Aldana. Irene Aldana, in her last fight, when she fought Holly Holm, what I didn't like about her was that she looked very one-dimensional. And I know that that's not her, which is what was upsetting me about that fight. Because I know she has good lateral movement, and she likes to take angles. And against Holly Holm, we did not see that. She was just following her in one direction. And Holly Holm was able to find her every single time. Like, that was a shutout. And on top of everything, Irene Aldana was able to get taken down. Which brings me to Yana Kunitskaya. Yana Kunitskaya is more than likely going to take this fight to the ground. Because that's where she feels most comfortable. I would say that if it stays striking, Irene Aldana is going to be able to piece her up. So Yana Kunitskaya, she's Thiago Santos' wifey. She's ranked number 5, and what I like about her ground game is that it's very active. She won't sit, she won't lay and pray. She's very aggressive on the ground. Her offense uses knees and elbows to the body. She actually used that against Vieira, and both these women actually fought Vieira, but Irene Aldana was able to knock her out. That one was a good finish. I also noticed that Irene Aldana likes to use more of a walk you down, pressure heavy kind of style. I guess Mexican, if you will. And Yana Kunitskaya could actually use that to her advantage. If Irene Aldana keeps pressuring forward and swings, maybe she overcommits. Yana Kunitskaya can go for a takedown if she times it right. But it might not be so easy for Kunitskaya. because Irene Aldana has an 85% takedown defense. So we'll see if it holds up, because in the last fight it didn't. But we'll see. So I personally, if I had to pick somebody in this fight, it's a tough one. I wouldn't bet on this one. But mandatory pick. Nonetheless, I have to pick somebody. So I'm going to ride with Irene Aldana, just because I'm going to trust that her team is going to come out and have set her up with a proper game plan. She's going to have learned from her last fight, and she's going to have made the proper adjustments. And she definitely has a takedown defense to hold up, and she's shown to have knockout power to be able to put people away. So I'm going to trust in that. I'm going to believe that Irene Aldana gets it done. I'm not going to call her around, but I'm going to say that she gets it done by knockout. So moving on to the next one, we got two big boys. Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy, a heavyweight fight. I'm personally really looking forward to it. So for this one, I'm just going to come out right out the gate. I think Tuivasa is going to knock Greg Hardy the fuck out. And the only way that I see Greg Hardy maybe having a chance in this fight, which I still don't think he has a chance, is if he finds a way to take Tuivasa down and tire him out, and then maybe eventually get to the striking realm. But I honestly don't think that Greg Hardy has the capacity to be able to do that. We saw him in his last fight, how gassed out he looked. He looked like he was dying. He's fucking used an inhaler in his previous fights. He's always pulling some shit. And Tuivasa, he is no slouch. He puts his hands together beautifully. He has amazing combinations. He's recently coming off of 2 knockout wins. And he literally just said in an interview that he's ready to bleed for 25 minutes. So if that doesn't tell you that he's ready for war, I don't know what does. And for this one, I'll pretty confidently ride with Tuivasa. What I can give Greg Hardy is that he has American Top Team behind him, which is one of the best gyms in the world. So they will undoubtedly come up with a pretty decent game plan for him. Help him last as long as he can, so he won't gas out, and be as efficient as possible. So that's what I would give Greg Hardy the best. The best outcome is that American Top Team came up with a proper game plan for him to go out there and stick to. But if he doesn't stick to a game plan and he decides to want to strike with Tuivasa, I know for a fact it's going to be a bad night. And Tuivasa will most likely knock Greg Hardy the fuck out. So that's my prediction for that fight. Very exciting. And then we're moving on to the co-main event. I'm really excited for this one. This one is the one that I'm looking forward to the most, besides the main event, obviously. Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. This one is going to be super exciting. I'm so intrigued to see how this is going to go down just because of the styles. So, Gilbert Burns, 19-4. Wonderboy, 16-4. Wonderboy has an extensive kickboxing, amateur and pro career. 37-0 amateur, 20-0 pro. You got to give it to him. I love watching him fight. He's exciting. He has great footwork, cage control, distance management. He has high fight IQ. He's always doing these YouTube videos where he's technique breakdowns, or Technique Tuesdays, I think it's called. And he's a phenom, man. His notable wins are Rory McDonald, George Masvidal, Vicente Luque, Geoff Neal. Those are his 2 most recent wins. And Gilbert Burns, he's coming off a loss against it was against the champion, so that's something you have to take into consideration. It's not like it was against the slouch or anything like that. It was against the champ, so that's something you have to think about. But what Usman did show in that fight is that Gilbert Burns can get caught pretty easily down the center line, and Wonderboy is fantastic at throwing things down the center line. So for me, I feel like Gilbert Burns is going to have to really switch things up. And I saw his coaches say that they're working on lateral movement and closing the distance, that's something they actually emphasize in this training camp. Definitely good to see that they're making proper adjustments and adjusting to Wonderboy's style as much as they can. How much will they be able to do it? We'll see, because he just recently lost to Usman, who was using strikes down the middle. And Wonderboy does everything beautifully down the middle. And whatever Usman was able to do with punches, Wonderboy is going to be able to do it, but with kicks. But on Gilbert Burns' credentials, a BJJ black belt since 2007, has won 2 IBJJF silver medals, has won gold medals. So, I mean, if this goes to the ground, we know for a fact how this fight is going to turn out. Most likely, Gilbert Burns is going to be able to submit Wonderboy, or if not, just ground and pound and just barrage him. But we do know that Wonderboy does have good get-ups, good takedown defense, so it could hold up. I believe Wonderboy's movement is elusive enough to keep Gilbert Burns chasing him, and that's what eventually is going to get Gilbert Burns caught on something. He's going to follow him, and he's going to run into something. He's going to get caught. He's going to get hurt. He's going to stumble. We've seen him get hurt before, and I honestly think that that's exactly what's going to happen. I think Wonderboy is going to lead him on to something, and is going to be able to put Gilbert Burns away. Maybe not early, or maybe he won't even be able to put him away, but I honestly do think that Wonderboy will most likely be able to get a knockdown, at least in this fight. So that is that prediction. That's another one I would bet on. So that's already 3 parlay. All right, but moving on to the big show, the main event, Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, the trilogy. So the one we've all been waiting for, the one everybody's been talking about. So everybody knows the narrative of this fight. Conor last fight got caught with calf kicks, was immobilized more, and thus was able to get caught, was able to get countered, and he got pieced up and he got knocked out. And we know that Conor in the first fight was very different stylistically. He was more elusive. He was bouncing back and forth. He was in and out. And he was also more kick heavy. So in the rematch, we noticed that he was very boxing heavy. And we also know that he was going to fight Manny Pacquiao apparently in a boxing exhibition or boxing fight. It was an actual fight, my bad. And so he came out with that one-sided mindset of, I'm just going to box this guy. And Dustin actually has some of the crispest boxing in that division, if not in the whole UFC. So Dustin was definitely able to find his openings and he was able to capitalize. So for this trilogy, the advice that Conor needs to keep in mind is that he's definitely going to come out more elusive like he did in the first fight. Even in the first fight, he got leg kicked. So even being as elusive as he was then, he could still potentially get leg kicked. But what I think that Conor can do to make the fight more in his favor is he can start leg kicking on his own. He can do oblique kicks to the side of the leg. He could do his side kicks that we've seen him do in his previous early UFC days. And all these things are little things that could eventually disrupt Dustin and cause Dustin to try to find a different way to close the distance, which would be in a more desperate manner. And that's where Conor would be able to capitalize and catch him and hurt him. So the X factor about this is that Conor has that little extra pop in his punch. You can just see that. Even in the second fight, Dustin himself said that if Conor pressed a little more, he could have potentially gotten the finish because Dustin got hurt from a shot at one point. So that just goes to show that Conor is dangerous almost all throughout the entire fight. And even when we've seen him fight Nate Diaz at 170, he was able to hurt Diaz and until later on in the fight. So honestly, Conor, you can't count him out, but you can never count Dustin out either because Dustin is a dog. He's been there. He's done that. He's fought the who's, and he's been the more active fighter. He's been keeping his record more consistent, and that could pay dividends in the fight. That could actually be the changing factor in this, that Dustin can make more adjustments on the fly because he's been there with more experience. So this one is hard, man, honestly. It tears me up because you cannot count Dustin out. He's good, man. He knows how to adjust. He knows what works for him and what doesn't. Dustin also has nothing to lose, and all the pressure is on Conor because Conor is essentially Conor. So if he loses again, then, I mean, he always has things he could fall back on, yes, of course. But, a lot of people are going to look at him very, very, very differently. But like I did mention earlier, that extra pop that Conor has, I feel like is what will be able to change the fight and will be able to win him the fight. So I'm going to ride with Conor on this one. I really fucking hope I don't regret this. I'm not going to bet on this one. This one is too close to call. Anybody can make the proper adjustments because these are two high-level guys that know exactly what each of them have to do. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out because this one's going to be mad. This one's going to be exciting. There's going to be a full crowd, so I expect it to be very loud. And we'll see. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Martial Mornings. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.